What's going on, you guys? It's your boy Patrick, aka Addicted to Combat, back for another week of UFC action. We have a lot of consecutive UFC events kicking off this season, and it starts with this Saturday. UFC Vegas 68, Derek Lewis versus Sergey Spivac in the rescheduled heavyweight main event. We also have 4 fights, which are the tournament finales for the road to the UFC, which cater to the Asian market and has a lot of Asian rising prospects that are going to be welcome to the UFC this Saturday, making their debuts. So those 4 fights are in the flyweight, bantamweight, featherweight, and lightweight divisions. The matchmaking was done very well, so even though you might not recognize the names, they're matched up well. They are exciting, talented fighters. I loved doing the tape study for this card, and I found some good betting spots that I do like among these 12 fights as well. So I'm going to be going over all of that, giving my brief picks and predictions for each of these 12 fights. I will be back on Wednesday for my live stream at 7 p.m. Central Time with the returning fan favorites on the show, Luke Betya. We'll be going over props and things that are available at that time. Also, forgive my gravelly voice. It might be going in and out during this video. I am coming down with a bit of a cold, but still wanted to get this video out and my opinions out early in the week. So hopefully by Wednesday on stream it'll be a little bit better. But either way, we'll persevere through that. And also check out BetUS Sportsbook, who I'm partnered with. They do have good lines on mixed martial arts, among other sports as well, but fights is really all I care about with that. So I'll be looking at and pointing out potential mispriced and beneficial lines on that sportsbook. But if you want to join, they'll match your deposit initially, 125% of your initial deposit bonus using my promo code AddictedToCombat125. So check that out in the description. If you want some free cash to gamble with, win money on fights, and without further ado, let's break into the first prelim of the night. Kicking off the prelims, we have a flyweight matchup between Tatsuro Taira and Jesus Aguilar. This is actually a battle between 2 grapplers at flyweight, and we've got the hyped Japanese prospect, 23-year-old undefeated Tatsuro Taira as a minus 1,200, minus 1,400 favorite, a massive favorite over the plus 700 or so underdog Jesus Aguilar, who's a Mexican fighter with an 8-1 record, not a bad pro record, and he's making his debut after a successful round 3 guillotine on the Dana White Contender Series last season. So both guys are young. Jesus Aguilar is only 3 years older at 26 years old, but he'll be giving up 4 inches of height and 8 inches of reach. And you got this overlapping skill set, which lends to the giant money line disparity here, where, you know, Tatsuro Taira, just quite frankly, is a much higher level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner, better wrestler, better, smoother, more efficient transitions, better top control. He just can do it a lot better than Jesus Aguilar can. Out of his 8 wins for Aguilar, 6 of them are by submission, and 5 of those are guillotine. He does not have a very good takedown defense, and not a very good ability to get the fight to the mat, and it's not been tested at a high level. So because of the size difference, it's already going to be hard for Jesus Aguilar to get in range, to grab onto that single leg, or get the hips, get the body lock, and take Taira down. But Taira is just way more smooth with this technique, way better, body triangle. He really knows how to read his opponents. And at 23, just a very, very gifted young man. He's got a very patient, composed style, whereas Jesus Aguilar is more of like a, bum rush type of grappler. It's more of a brute force type of wrestler. So it's going to be that type of, inexperienced grappling versus the gifted way that Taira can flow from one move to the next. So we were able to see Tatsuro Taira go 2-0 in the UFC last year against Carlos Candelario, who he got like 10 minutes of ground control time on. A knockdown, and then also against CJ Vergara late last year, he was able to get that round 2 sub, transitioning from a body triangle rear naked choke attempt for a minute or two, and then he switched that with good dexterity right into an armbar, which he got. So he was even able to work his way out of a bad spot in round 1. Tatsuro Taira just shows very good patience. He's got 3 knockouts, 6 submissions that make up 9 of the 12 finishes on his win record. So I think he either racks up enough control time to win another one-sided decision here, or he gets the submission at some point in this fight. I'm not sure when. Like I said, the guy's very patient. His stand-up is also coming along quite well. So It would be like a Hail Mary submission off of his back, one of those guillotines, or a puncher's chance is how I see Aguilar winning this fight. So, and Aguilar's not even that bad of a fighter. I just don't think he's on the level of Taira. So, not much I can do with the minus 1,400 money line. Maybe you could look for the inside the distance or fight doesn't go prop if you want to chop down that money line. But give me Tetsuro Taira. I'll say he gets a submission somewhere in the stretch of this fight. Up next at middleweight, we've got Jung Park taking on Dennis Tiuliulin. Jung Park is South Korea's own middleweight here, former welterweight. He is going to be giving up a little bit of size and reach to Dennis Tiuliulin, who's the 6'1", 34-year-old Russian. Jung Park will be a few years younger, but he's got a lot more experience in the UFC with 7 appearances in the organization, going 5-2 in those. Known for being very durable as well, known for having pretty good boxing up close, nice combinations from Jung Park, a very good pace and cardio. He also has a kind of a slick ground game when he can get the fight to the mat. Remember against John Phillips, he also had that record-setting ground strike performance in that 3-round bout, which was pretty impressive a couple years back. Now, Dennis Tiuliulin has got an 11-6 or 10-6 and 1 no contest record. So, not the best record coming off of the regional scene of Russia, but Dennis Tiuliulin 1-1 in the UFC, just coming off of a victory over Jamie Pickett by round 2 knockout. And that's generally how Dennis Tiuliulin gets his victories. Out of his 10 wins, 9 of them are by knockout. I believe all of those except for the Jamie Pickett one were under 1.5 rounds. So usually he gets the job done early. If not, and it goes late, he can fall apart. He can get out-wrestled. Although he has had a tough test, his debut on short notice was against Elias Kebkizriev, who's a very talented newcomer, very good wrestler. And he also had to fight somebody who we'll see in the UFC making their debut this year named Iskrem Aliskerov, who was able to get a round 3 submission on him outside of the UFC. So, he's able to get taken down, able to get ground out, but Jamie Pickett was not able to employ that game plan. And Dennis Tiuliulin's got power, some decent technique, but, Jung Park is very tough. That's one of his best qualities, his durability. He's only been put out by strikes 1 time in his career by Gregory RoboCop Rodriguez. So if this is more of a technical boxing match with some good movement, I would favor Jung Park. Jung Park can drag this out late with some pretty good sustained pace in the fight. That favors Jung Park. The grappling and the ability to get this fight to the mat, work some submissions, favors Jung Park. And all of these areas have given Dennis Tiuliulin trouble, who's very finish-dependent in this fight. So I don't like finish-dependent guys who are fighting very durable ones like Jung Park. So I think Park is a very good pick here. I think the match is very well made for him. Minus 205 on the money line. I don't mind that price. I think it is climbing, more money coming in on Jung Park. But overall, the pick's going to be Park. I think by decision or by a late finish in this fight, the round 3 props will maybe be a good look in this spot as well when they drop. So I'll be looking out for that, but Jung Park is the pick. Up next at women's flyweight, we've got Ji-Yeon Kim taking on Mandy Bohm. This is South Korea's Ji-Yeon Kim taking on the German Mandy Bohm. And not too much to say positively about these two fighters. They're both doing very poorly in the UFC. We've got Ji-Yeon Kim, the much more experienced of the two 33-year-old strikers here, with a 9-fight UFC career so far, but she's gone 3-6 in those appearances. Currently, Ji-Yeon Kim is on a 4-fight losing streak. Now, Mandy Bohm is 0-2 in the UFC, so much less experience as the Muay Thai German striker here. Not much to admire about her performances, even in her Bellator bout that she barely won before she got in the UFC. So this is reflected in her odds. Ji-Yeon Kim is the minus 280 favorite. Mandy Bohm, the plus 240 underdog here. Like I said, both 33 years old at flyweight. Only about an inch separates their height and reach, so the size is about the same. Neither of them have been finished in their career, so that's a positive. Mandy Bohm is, when she can get there, she's okay in the clinch, throws decent knees to the body, to the head, but she can get taken down and out-grappled, as can Ji-Yeon Kim. So that's kind of the kryptonite for both of these women, is their grappling defense is not very good. So whichever fighter can exploit that of the other could maybe have success in this fight. I think Ji-Yeon Kim has the better experience, the better wins, the better striking output, the better technique, cardio, and she's been tough so far in her UFC career. Mandy Bohm has been a little bit less tested, even though, like I said, she has not been finished in mixed martial arts either. I will say Mandy Bohm could surprise us. Maybe she could come back with more of like a grappling heavy game plan, negate all of the striking advantages from Ji-Yeon Kim and win this fight, or at least make it close enough to be a split decision that gets won in her favor. That could happen when you're considering these odds, paying minus 280 as a favorite on Ji-Yeon Kim, who is on a 4-fight losing streak. Now, when you look at those losses, though, the Jocelyn Edwards one that she just lost, it was a decent account from Ji-Yeon Kim, but I do think that she lost that fight pretty fair and square. Now, the Priscilla Cachoeira fight before that, she outstruck Priscilla Cachoeira on total and significant strikes pretty handedly, but just due to perceived damage, perceived forward pressure and aggression, they gave the fight to Priscilla Cachoeira. I think Ji-Yeon Kim could have fairly won that fight, even though that was a unanimous decision result. So, that one you could maybe give back to her, but still, before that, Molly McCann and Alexa Grasso both had their way with her. Much better fighters. So, pretty bottom of the barrel. Like I said, 3-6 in the UFC for Ji-Yeon Kim, but I do think she's the better fighter. So give me Ji-Yeon Kim by decision. Most likely no bets on this fight. The over-unders even are at over 2.5, where I think it's going to go. Neither fighter been finished, minus 350 for that. So a little bit unplayable, but Ji-Yeon Kim I see getting her hand raised. The next 4 fights are all going to be consecutive matches from flyweight all the way ascending up to lightweight finales for the road to the UFC. So we're going to see all of these fighters in the UFC officially for the first time. Most of them had 2 matches in the tournament last year in 2022, including these 2 Koreans, Hyun Sung Park versus Seong-Guk Choi at flyweight. This is the finale bout between 2 guys who are only a year apart in age. They're both 26 for Choi, 27 for Park. Very much in their prime at the weight class at 125. 7-0 record for Hyun Sung Park. He's got 3 knockouts and 3 submissions among those. So only seen the judges' scorecards 1 time in a decision win. And Seong-Guk Choi is 6-1, but he's been to the scorecards 5 times, going 4-1 in those appearances. He also has 2 knockouts. Now, both of the appearances on the road to the UFC tournament for Hyun Sung Park were finishes in round 1. TKO stoppage in his first bout in the tournament where he flattened out his opponent in a back mount, I believe, and was able to get that TKO stoppage due to strikes. The most recent one was a round 1 rear naked choke, a very slick one. After Hyun Sung Park actually faced some early adversity, he got knocked down by his opponent, had to work his way back in, maintain composure, and eventually he was able to get the takedown and secure the back rather easily in that bout against a Muay Thai fighter. Now, Seong-Guk Choi, I gotta say, the guy is more of a frantic fighter, springy, light on his feet, in and out movement for Choi, and he's the higher output striker from what I can see so far. He also has 9 amateur bouts where he went 6-3, so a little bit more experience for Seong-Guk Choi than you would think just by looking at his pro record at 6-1. Now, I will say, Hyun Sung Park looks like he's the more technical striker, but he's very much more one at a time, heavy leg kick for heavy strike, looking for the counter. He's very patient and measured, and not always in a rush to get the fight to the ground, where I think Hyun Sung Park actually has the advantage in this fight. But Seong-Guk Choi also has very good wrestling as well, but he looks to use it a little bit more, looks to, threaten with takedowns. Whether he's going to get it or not, he's strong in the clinch. Pretty good cardio because he can make you guess between, is he going to level change for a takedown? Is he going to work back to the feet and, start striking me up again? His opponents have to stay guessing as to what Choi is going to do. And Choi is the underdog in this matchup. And at flyweight, I really do like guys that have more of a high output. They're willing to take more risks and have more output because it is 125 at the end of the day. You're not going to see finishes all the time, especially knockouts. So I'm going to take Seong-Guk Choi. This is, out of the 4 tournament finales, my least confident pick. I'm not going to get there betting-wise on this underdog, but I do like his chances. I think the money line is much too wide. Minus 200, minus 190, what I'm seeing on Hyun Sung Park. I'm just not too convinced. Now, he could come in here, grapple effectively immediately, and sync up a choke again, grabbing the back. That could happen, but I think Seong-Guk Choi has got a very good chance, more than his money line indicates, to outstrike his way to a decision victory, his 3rd decision victory in a row. Up next at bantamweight, this is the tournament finale between 2 Japanese 135-pounders, Rinya Nakamura versus Toshiomi Kazama, and both of these guys probably want to get this fight to the mat in most worlds. We've got Rinya Nakamura, the -425 undefeated favorite at 6-0. He's an international wrestling champion in freestyle wrestling, lifelong wrestler who's now turned his sights to mixed martial arts, and he's been doing pretty damn good with a lot of finishes. 5 finishes make up Nakamura's 6 wins, with 4 knockouts among those. He's 27 years old, a southpaw, taking on Toshiomi Kazama, who's a very talented champion in jiu-jitsu with a little bit more pro MMA experience with a 10-2 record. Again, 8 of those were finishes from Kazama. 5 submissions, 3 knockouts. He's only 25 years old, but you got -425 for the undefeated wrestler in Nakamura, plus 325 the underdog price on Kazama, who actually only had 1 performance on this road to the UFC tournament, did Kazama. He got a bye for his second fight, whereas Nakamura had to finish both of his 2 opponents in the bracket, one by a vicious knockout. This guy has got hands, and the other was due to grounding his opponent and getting the key lock submission in round 1. So very quick finisher for Nakamura, gets the fight to the mat pretty much at will, can toss his opponent to the ground with authority or stand and bang with him if they give him distance to do so, as we saw in one of his bouts. So heavy leg kicks, powerful left straight, very good winging hooks as well that are accurate for Nakamura. He just seems like the faster man here with a lot more athletic potential. Now, Toshiomi Kazama, very dangerous in all positions with his BJJ, or his jiu-jitsu in general. He's got a wide stance that he strikes with, pretty much just looks to spring forward and get you to the mat, grind you in the clinch against the cage, and eventually look for that takedown entry, or just take your back in general. And he's got a wide variety of submissions, a good triangle choke from a variety of positions, very good shoulder locks and arm bars and things like that. So, again, you're getting a -425 favorite price tag on Nakamura, who likely will take the fight down to the mat where Kazama wants it to be. But like I mentioned before, Nakamura, very good with his hands. He's got very improved and very, good combinations and very eager, aggressive striking from Nakamura. We'll put it that way. So this guy could keep you guessing. You could think he's going for the takedown. He could just box you up and put you away that way. We haven't seen a whole lot of ring time from Nakamura, but just given his athletic background, I think he's going to be fine cardio-wise in this matchup, and I think he can stay safe. He establishes side control very effectively, and I think he can stay chest-to-chest pressure and maybe even find a submission of his own, if not a ground-and-pound TKO finish for Nakamura. So just a better all-around fighter here, and a guy who I think is skilled enough on the ground to stay safe from submission threats. Give me Nakamura. He's probably my most confident winner of this road to the UFC tournament in these 4 matches. As far as placing a bet on Nakamura, I mean, you could parlay him up. He is a -425 favorite, and a guy who, like I said, we haven't seen a whole lot of ring time because he gets very quick finishes. I do think he wins, but I want to play this more from a time prop. I like the fight doesn't go to decision. I do have that. I got it at -170 because that covers the Kazama Hail Mary submission off of his back, getting an armbar or a triangle or something like that, a guillotine, anything. Nakamura also could get the knockout on the feet, or he could get a submission of his own. Both guys are finishers. I like the fight doesn't go at -170. Even the under 2.5, if you can get something comparable to that around that -200 range, I would not hate chopping down that money line of Nakamura and even giving yourself the option in case he gets submitted here. Up next at featherweight, we have the tournament finale for the 145ers, and finally 2 countries going head-to-head. We've got China's Jia Yi taking on South Korea's Jung Lee, and it's a very exciting matchup. 26 years old for Jia Yi, who has a 21-3 professional record, so a lot more experience than the 9-1 27-year-old Korean. But Jung Lee has got this it factor about him. He's got that very confident, patient, yet aggressive style. And he's got the death touch at 145. Massive power in his right hand. Good combinations. And he closes the distance very fast with fast hand speed. He's on a 3 round 1 fight finish streak. Both of his appearances on the road to the UFC bracket have been finishes in round 1 very early. In fact, in his last 3 fights, Jung Lee has only seen less than 1.5 minutes of total cage time. So this guy is a finisher in every sense of the word. He had that awesome right cross to right hook knockout over Liu Kei, and before that he fought Bin Ji and managed to get taken down, but in like less than 30 seconds or so, he locked up an armbar off of his back and ended the fight that way. So he does have a couple of decision results on his record, and one of them was extremely impressive that I saw from Jung Lee a few years ago against a guy named Choi, who kind of showed that Jung Lee can be hittable, he can be in extended firefights, and he got rocked in that fight, did Lee, but he managed to recover, show pretty good durability and resolve, and almost hit like a second wind towards the halfway mark of that 3-round fight. And by the end of round 2, his opponent's face was totally swollen up in both eyes, lacerations all over the place, and Jung Lee proved that he has the cardio, the aggression, kind of like the love for violence, and the ability to sustain that pace and that power in all 3 rounds. So even though he's a very fast starter in his last 3 fights, he can sustain that pace. Jia Yi, the path to victory here would definitely be to get this fight to the mat, use that superior grappling that you see on paper. But again, fighting in the WLF promotion, getting that 21-3 record, it's a mixed bag of okay opponents and, absolute bums. So there's a lot to be said about does Jung Lee have the good enough defensive wrestling here? Can he get back to his feet? I think he can. I think Jia Yi is going to have trouble holding down Jung Lee for the majority of 15 minutes and avoid that power. I think the athleticism, the power difference, the ability to end the fight in a moment's notice is just all in the favor of Jung Lee, who is also the much bigger man in this matchup at 5'10" and a couple inches of reach. So, again, size, speed, power, just that it factor. Give me Jung Lee. He is a minus 250 favorite in this matchup at this point. I'm sure money will come in on him. But maybe look for Lee inside the distance, which is around minus 135. Maybe look for the fight doesn't go. Both guys are finishers. Again, Jung Lee, you never know if this guy could fall prey to the grappling of Jia Lee. So maybe the under 2.5 or the fight doesn't go is a good way to look at this too. But overall, I see another under 1.5 round knockout for Jung Lee from Korea. And I look forward to seeing this guy in the UFC. Closing out the prelims, we have the 155-pound division tournament finale here at lightweight between 2 guys from underrepresented countries in the UFC. India's Anshul Jubli taking on Jeka Saragih from Indonesia. So both of these guys are from countries where there's nobody else on the roster from their nation. A lot of added pressure and a lot of excitement for these guys coming into this event. Now, it's a very closely lined fight on the money line. Slight favorite goes to Anshul Jubli, the undefeated 6-0 Indian. Slight underdog at plus 105 for Jeka Saragih from Indonesia. Both guys 28 years old, similar reach. A little bit of a height advantage, 4 inches of height for Anshul Jubli, but both guys were moderate underdogs in their road to the UFC former fight in the bracket. And look, Anshul Jubli, very new to mixed martial arts in general. I believe he's only been fighting mixed martial arts for about 4 or 5 years, or even training it. Whereas Anshul Jubli had a split decision win as a slight underdog in his only road to the UFC appearance in the tournament. Jeka Saragih actually had 2 finishes, and impressive ones at that, both knockouts in his 2 bracket wins. Now, the last one was a round 1 knockout about 3 minutes into round 1, where he was able to pick his shots very effectively against a bigger man, close the distance, and look for the perfect punch, the perfect rear cross, which was a very satisfying knockout over his opponent, showing that he has amazing power. The one before that was actually a round 3 spinning back fist, which he accurately lined up against a very tired opponent that he was able to defensively grapple against the entire match and outstrike. So Jeka Saragih is a guy who I think has the way better striking in this matchup, the way better ability to end the fight, and I think he's got better grappling as well. So I failed to see where Anshul Jubli, outside of the height advantage, outside of his undefeated record, I failed to see why he should be a slight favorite in this matchup. I think it's a steal of a price to get plus money on Jeka Saragih, and even at pick 'em price, I think it's a very good bet. Saragih has got the experience, the hand speed, the power. I think he's got the striking selection, the unpredictability, the experience. I really do think Jubli is going to be looking to get this fight to the mat, trying to avoid the striking of Jeka Saragih early. I think he knows he's going to be outmatched here on the feet, and he'll be looking to get the fight to the mat. But as we saw in the split decision win he had on the road to the UFC, he can gas out in the fight. And in round 3, he basically got to coast and survive, which is why he won that fight by a split and why it was a 29-28 decision win for him in the judges that gave him the victory. So Jubli is confident. He does have the ability, like I said, to probably progress a little bit faster in a lot of these techniques since he's newer to martial arts and mixed martial arts as a whole. But I got to go with the 5-fight winning streak, the experience, and the power of Saragih. I just think he's the better man, and I think Indonesia sees their first fighter in the UFC. So give me Saragih. I did bet him at plus 105. Okay, starting the main card, we have a welterweight bout between Yasaku Kinoshita taking on Adam Fugitt. Welterweight bout, the Japanese debuting fighter Kinoshita is off the Dana White Contender Series, where he scored a round 3 TKO stoppage. And this guy's never been to a decision before. He's a 6-1 professional from Japan, 4 knockouts, 2 submissions, and 1 loss, a disqualification where he actually knocked a guy down and foot stomped him, but while he was foot stomping the guy to death, he held the cage. So the guy got disqualified for that as a loss. But other than that, 22 years old, the guy looks pretty darn good. A very slick striker, 6 foot tall, a very tall welterweight. Adam Fugitt's actually 1 inch taller with about 6 inches more of reach. But he's also 12 years older as Fugitt. I don't think his technical striking is as great as that of Kinoshita, who is very talented for his age, lacking the experience. But Adam Fugitt has an 8-3 record. His biggest win, Adam Fugitt, was over in the LFA, where he got that right hook round 1 knockout over Solomon Renfro in a big upset where, Adam Fugitt threw that hook, threw a high kick a few times, and Solomon Renfro still walked into it and got knocked out cold. But overall, Fugitt, a decent, well-rounded generalist, a very awkward fighter on the feet with long, rangy strikes. Not the best striking defense, but he's got a good ground game as well as Muay Thai experience in his background. So this will be a southpaw versus southpaw matchup to make things even more awkward. But Kinoshita should be the faster guy with faster hand speed, probably more fight-ending power on the feet. I do like Adam Fugitt's chances, though, when you compare it to the money line. We've got minus 300, minus 320 favorite on Kinoshita in a debut spot at 22 years old against, some questionable competition so far. Adam Fugitt, he's a little bit more battle-tested at 34 years old. Like I said, he's got a pretty diverse combat experience background. He's a plus 270 underdog on some books, plus 250 on most others. And the guy, he just fought Michael Morales and gave that kid his biggest test to date. So he's already tested against an early 20-year-old giant welterweight prospect in Michael Morales. That kid is a savage. He's going to be a problem in the division for years to come, in my opinion. And Adam Fugitt actually had success taking him down, slowing the pace of that fight, and making him work and stay composed until eventually Morales managed to knock him down and swarm him with strikes in round 3. So if Adam Fugitt can take Kinoshita to the same distance he took Michael Morales, I think Fugitt is very live to pull off the upset here as an underdog. Sometimes these awkward fighters with that strange footwork, strange movement style and striking pattern like that of Adam Fugitt, they can make things very awkward for a more traditional, inexperienced young fighter like Kinoshita. But what I would hope is that Adam Fugitt takes this fight to the mat instantly. We've seen Kinoshita taken down in the past and controlled for periods of time, even get his back taken. I think Adam Fugitt is live to control the fight there and slow down and take the power out of the limbs and out of the strikes of Kinoshita. So I'm going to take Adam Fugitt as an underdog here. At plus 270 might be worth either a 3/4 of a unit or a 1 unit play. If this goes, this either stays at plus 270 or goes even closer to plus 300, I'll have to take that stab on him because I think it's a mispriced line, and I think just his age and experience and the things he's seen, and if he grapples, I think he can win this fight. So give me Adam Fugitt to pull off the upset in either a decision or a submission. Up next at featherweight, we've got Kyle Nelson welcoming back the returning Doo-Ho Choi after a 3-year-long layoff. Doo-Ho Choi from Korea, he was doing his South Korean leave of military absence, where he spent a couple years there as they have to before they turn 30, before they're in the late 20s, something like that. We've seen both Kyung-Ho Kang and the Korean zombie Changsung Jung have to do that as well. Take like a 3-year-long layoff off of the UFC. both of those guys came back in their return fight with a round 1 stoppage. So we'll see if Choi can do the same over Kyle Nelson, the Canadian, who is 1-4 in the UFC, riding a 2-fight loss streak for Kyle Nelson. Both of these guys, riding losses right now, looking for their first win in a long time. Choi is a Korean striker, a kill or be killed fighter. He started his UFC career with 3 round 1 knockouts, followed by 3 losses. 2 of those he was knocked out himself. So the losses much better for Choi than the losses for Kyle Nelson. Let's be honest. Kyle Nelson is a guy who his only win in the UFC was over Polo Reyes by a standing TKO stoppage, and it was in a fashion where Kyle Nelson really does flourish. If you can get Kyle Nelson in a spot where he can trap you against the cage, let off reckless combinations with your back against the cage, and you can't escape, his dirty boxing and clinch work there is pretty good. And he does have a BJJ brown belt, but he just does not have the wrestling, Kyle Nelson, to get the fight to the ground. He's got like a 10% recorded takedown accuracy, very comfortable striking, and just having a sloppy slugfest. And he doesn't really have the good output or the good cardio to maintain technique over time. Now, Choi is a guy where he's got very slick techniques, but he takes a lot of risk. And it ends up against some of these upper echelon guys like Charles Jourdain. Early success from Choi, and then he ended up faltering in round 2. Same with guys like he fought Cub Swanson, and he fought Jeremy Stevens kind of the same way. Very exciting fights, but just not getting the edge over those guys in the end. Now, Choi, still 31 years old, as is Kyle Nelson, so at the weight class, he still has some time to work and improve. He doesn't have to fight miles, Choi, since he was able to step away from getting his brains, battered around in the cage for 3 years. So he can come back and maybe have some more longevity. The guy is 14-4 as a record professionally, 11 knockouts, 1 submission, 2 and 2 indecisions. So he is very much a finisher, as is Kyle Nelson. But again, you compare the records: 3-3 in the UFC for Choi, 1-4 for Kyle Nelson. I want to say they're showcasing Choi and his talents here. I think Kyle Nelson's a guy who will probably stand and bang, even though he should clinch up and get this fight to the mat, or at least try to. I don't think he'll be successful. So, the pro column for Kyle Nelson, he's been more active. He's got better BJJ, as a specialty. But the technical striking, the speed, the power, the better competition faced, the aggression, I'd say even the pace and the cardio, all goes to Choi. It's just the 3-year-long layoff sketches me out. I don't like backing those guys because I don't know what version I'm going to get. But, unless we see a very diminished version of Choi and a, much more refined skill set from Kyle Nelson, I think the money line at -190 on Choi makes sense. I probably do like the unders in this spot. Both guys are finishers, but I might lay off of this fight from a betting perspective. But if I had to pick a side, it would be Choi inside the distance. Up next at heavyweights, we've got Marcin Tybura taking on Blagoy Ivanov. It's a spot where both guys usually tend to weigh in around the same mark, around the mid to low 250s. In their last appearance for both guys around the same age. Oddly enough, Marcin Tybura is 37, 1 year older than Blagoy Ivanov. I could swear Blagoy Ivanov is like 46 instead of 36. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a typo on this guy's birth certificate. But Marcin Tybura, a big reach and height advantage as well, at 6'3" and a 78-inch reach for the Polish fighter. And Marcin Tybura, who's won 6 of his last 7 fights at heavyweight, is very impressive, including his last win over Alexander Romanov, who's a very hyped prospect and a potent finisher and grappler. Tybura able to withstand the early onslaught of a 10-8 round and, pick up the pieces, accelerate into rounds 2 and 3, and face a gassed Romanov. So that was pretty impressive. Before that, Marcin Tybura was riding a 5-fight winning streak before being stopped by Alexander Volkov. So very rare feats to be had at heavyweight. Marcin Tybura is 10-6 in the UFC's heavyweight division. Blagoy Ivanov 3-3. He's very inactive. He made his debut a few years back against Junior Dos Santos in a 5-round main event. Since this guy was the World Series of Fighting champion, the combat sambo and judo based Bulgarian Blagoy Ivanov is 19-4. with 12 finishes, 6 knockouts, 6 submissions. But we haven't seen one of those in a long time. In the UFC, all 6 of his fights have been decision results, and they're getting more and more sketchy. You know, we're seeing the fight against Marcos Rogerio de Lima last May. That could have been any man's 29-28, and luckily Ivanov got the unanimous decision that night. Very close. I mean, before that, he had split decision losses to Sakai, to Lewis. You know, it seems like he's got solid boxing still, good durability still. The power, of course, he has to possess as a big man, but we just never see it. And in this fight against Marcin Tybura, Tybura's very mobile for as big as he is. He's got decent boxing and a good ability to pressure in the clinch and drag the fight to the mat where he can flatten you out, tire you out, and, you know, pretty much just like let you waste your resources as far as your energy goes, and he takes over and outpoints you to a decision result, or he can flatten you out and TKO you that way. So, you know, the 23-7 record of Tybura, a lot of finishes, but also a positive 8-3 decision record for Tybura as well. This guy is pretty much the gatekeeper to like the upper echelon, you know, the upper part of the top 10 in the heavyweight division. If you're going to beat somebody in the heavyweight division, you got to beat Tybura. Not a whole lot of people are successful these days. So more active fighter as far as the schedule goes, busier striking output. He actually hits his opponent more than he gets hit in return over a large sample size here. I got to say, I'm pretty impressed with Tybura, like his skill set as an older heavyweight, lacking the athleticism a lot of these guys have in the top 5. I'm going to take him to win over Blago Ivanov. The money line was all the way up at like minus 200 or more for Tybura, and I almost hit that early. Luckily, I was patient. It's since come down to minus 150 and minus 135 at this point even as well. So people are biting on Blago Ivanov. Maybe it's just like the sloppy heavyweight factor where it's like if you're going to give big plus money on Ivanov. But again, it seems like Ivanov seems to be the more finish-dependent fighter in this matchup, and he hasn't gotten one in the UFC. It's been a long time, so it could certainly happen, but I'm very confident on Tybura, especially at the minus 135 money line. So give me Tybura to win a decision. You can look at the time props. It's favored to go over 2.5, which is scary in a heavyweight fight. So pushing like minus 175, minus 200 for an over in a heavyweight fight, I don't like that very much, but I do think it goes over, and I do think Tybura wins the decision. Up next, we have the co-main event of the evening, light heavyweight bout between South Korea's own Da-Un Jung and Devin Clark. Now, Da-Un Jung is coming off of that loss last summer to Dustin Jacoby by knockout. I was very surprised that happened the way it did, but he is still 29 years old, a giant 6'4" at the weight class with a 78.5-inch reach. He's 15 wins, 3 losses, 1 draw, and he's got 13 stoppages, including 11 knockouts. So this guy, a finisher, often very quick and early into the fight. Devin Clark is a guy who has a lot of UFC experience, a very good skill set, and very good potential that he usually falls short from achieving. And it's very disappointing because I think this guy could be a pretty good threat at 205 pounds, but 32 years old, already a 7-7 record in the UFC, 6-6 in just light heavyweight specifically. This guy's best moment in the UFC was a couple fights ago against William Knight up at heavyweight, where he got that round 3 knockout over William Knight. So a wrestler and a college wrestler, not always able to get that game plan implemented, but he's a guy, Devin Clark, who he can beat the bottom of the barrel light heavyweights who will never be ranked. But the guys who are going to be ranked, the guys who can move up the food chain at the weight class, will beat him every time. So he's got 3 knockout losses, including his last fight to Azamat Mirzakhanov, who's a pretty green newcomer in the UFC, but talented nonetheless. Mirzakhanov able to knock him out in round 3 pretty viciously and dominated him in the striking. So not a very good look. Now, Devin Clark, not a good finisher himself. 13 wins. He's 8-1 in decision, so often has to rely on that wrestling game plan, the smothering top pressure, the minute winning that way, clinch work, but he does have some good kicks. He does have, powerful striking, but, it's very one at a time. It's not very combination-oriented or sustained. He's a little bit hesitant against a lot of opponents who can outstrike him and just, outpower him. So You got to watch out for his clinch work, the elbows and things like that. His rear counter cross is just a good way to set up his double leg takedown. Usually when he lands something successful in the feet, it's just to set up the wrestling, which he may or may not be successful with. So that's part of Devin Clark's downfall. And, Dawoon Jung, I just think, is just better. He's 4-1-1 draw in the UFC in his 6 appearances so far. He's got the size, the power, the aggressiveness. I think the durability is in the favor of Dawoon Jung. And he's just got the youth and ability to improve here. So very physically strong, and his takedown defense holds up. So Dawoon Jung, minus 235 on the money line. I think that sounds about right. Maybe not a lot of extra value on that, but I do think he wins. And I do think it ends up being a stoppage in this bout. He's live to get the knockout against Devin Clark, who we've seen kind of react very poorly to strikes damaging his chin. Let's just put it that way. So it could be a Jung decision, but I think he more than likely continues the pattern of getting exciting knockouts and finishes Devin Clark somewhere within 2 rounds. Okay, we've made it all the way to the main event of the Fight Night card. Heavyweight match rescheduled from last year between Derek Lewis and Sergey Spivac. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. Let's keep the channel growing, and let's break into this main event. It's going to be an exciting one because all Derek Lewis main events have that aura of excitement. You never know if he's going to leave his opponent twitching on the canvas or what will happen and when, because Derek Lewis is very experienced as a heavyweight. He's been pretty successful as a one-dimensional fighter throughout his reign in the UFC since, 2013 or so. I want to say he made his debut in 2013 or 14. I can't remember, but it's been a while now. And Sergey Spivac, 10 years younger at 27, the Moldovan grappler. He's about 250 pounds when he weighs in. At least he was last time out against Augusto Sakai, who he got a round 2 TKO over. Derek Lewis, bigger man. He cuts down to that 265-pound limit. He is the taller. Actually, they got the same height here. A little bit of reach in the favor of Derek Lewis. But, of course, Lewis, a lot more fight miles. He is 10 years older. That's the main thing that sticks out on the page for me. I'm hearing rumors that there's going to be a slimmed-down version of Derek Lewis. I have not seen this, but even if he is more slim, I think he still has to cut down to 265. I'd be surprised. But Derek Lewis, it's not been too kind for him. He's been knocked out back-to-back from Sergey Pavlovich. Not a bad loss in hindsight anymore. And Tai Tuivasa, who's pretty much a younger version in my eyes as Derek Lewis. I've mentioned that before. My opinion on this fight has not changed since the last time they were matched up, but the money line has a little bit. Sergey Spivac already on Monday, early in the week, he's a minus 230 favorite. Derek Lewis, the plus 195 underdog. So a little bit more in each direction than last time. Derek Lewis, 26-10-1 no contest. 21 knockouts, the record for knockouts in the UFC, record in the heavyweight division for finishes. The guy is very slow, very plodding, but he is a little bit more athletic than people give him credit for, at least early. He does tend to quit as the cardio and the fatigue overwhelms him, but he's usually losing to guys who are very elite movers, elite strikers, point fighters, guys like Cyril Gane, guys who can match his size and power, guys like I just mentioned, Sergey Pavlovich, Tai Tuivasa, a very elite caliber champion level wrestler like Derek Lewis like Daniel Cormier was able to ground him and take him down and hold him there. One of the few guys that has been able to. But other than that, Derek Lewis, even in 5-round bouts like this one is scheduled to be, even though none of his 5-round bouts have made it all the way to the 25-minute mark, Derek Lewis is 5-4 in those appearances in 5-round main event spots. So, and these are over some pretty elite fighters, but guys, of course, better movers, Cyril Gane, Junior Dos Santos, these guys can dance around him and outpoint him and frustrate him until he breaks. Sergey Spivac is a guy who is reliant on being that Moldovan grappler, muscling his opponent to the ground and working the ground strikes that way, and he was able to do that against a guy like Sakai back in August. Sakai doesn't have very good cardio. He's just not a very talented fighter, as we found out as the years have gone on. Greg Hardy, cut from the promotion, same deal, TKO'd, grounded in round 1. Alexei Oleinik, before that, old man, and it was still a decision result. Jared Vandera before that by, grounding him in round 2 and getting the late round 2 TKO stoppage. decision over Carlos Felipe before that. I mean, these are not very impressive wins in his last 5 out of 6 performances. The one loss in those was 3 fights ago against Tom Aspinall, a guy who is a very fast starter. Of course, Sergey Spivac is, he can strike. He's got some basic combinations, but he's very... He's kind of ill at ease to strike. He's always coiled up, and you could tell he's just looking for an opportunity to shoot a takedown or try to clinch up. And, he relies on muscling his opponents to the mat more than, straight technique. So it's going to be hard to do against a large man in Derek Lewis. This is a spot where at plus 195, I do think Derek Lewis has a very good chance to pull off the knockout upset here. This is one of the people in the division where I think Lewis can win, even at his old age, even if he is a little over the hill. He's got the power, the explosivity, the experience, the durability I would give to Derek Lewis, at least in the first half of the fight. Just the raw strength I'd give to Lewis as well. So Spivac does have the youth, the minute-winning ability, maybe even the cardio, but I think the cardio will start to wane as he tries to muscle Derek Lewis around and hold him down. So there's some things for Sergey Spivac. He does dip his head in certain ways, leave his opponents, like right hand free when he's tying up with them. Things that I think Derek Lewis can exploit early. So I'm going to say an early round 2 KO for Derek Lewis. My opinion, of course, has not changed. And if this sees plus 195 at the end of the week or, plus 200 or more, I might have to put a unit on Derek Lewis. I think those are very good odds for his puncher's chance. Even though I'm not a big fan of his as a fighter, like I said earlier, he does tend to quit as fatigue overwhelms him. So if you're going to see an improved version of Sergey Spivac and a more reduced version of Derek Lewis than even we've seen recently, I'd be worried. But at the odds, I think Lewis is a good side here. I think he's got a very good chance of pulling this off. Okay, there you guys have it. All the fights broken down for UFC Vegas 68, Derek Lewis versus Sergey Spivac, and the road to the UFC tournament finales. And speaking of that, they're going to be giving viewing preference to the Asian market. So it's going to be prime time for them. But for us, it'll be a late night of watching these fights. I believe the Central Standard Time Zone, I think they start at 10 p.m. for the prelim start time. So it'll be a late night, but a good opportunity to make some money, meet some new fighters on the roster, and enjoy some violence. So hit the like, hit the subscribe. I'll talk to you guys next time. Cheers.